2-minute alarm. If you hear the noise or hear me interject, please respect that and sum up your comments. We welcome the submission of written statements. In such cases, oral comments are not necessary. The board will review all written materials that are submitted. If you have written statements today, please submit them to staff. We will receive public comment in this order. First, the Virginia Statewide Fire Prevention Code. Next, the Uniform Statewide Building Code. And then the Virginia Amusement Device Regulations. And last, the Virginia Industrialized Building Safety Regulations. We will first go to those in person, then to those participating virtually online. I now open the public hearing and call the first speaker.
Chair, I don't think we have anyone registered for the statewide fire prevention code. If there's anyone present in the audience or online for the fire code? Okay, let's know now.
Yes, for the fire code?
Yes. Yes, statewide fire prevention code.
Yes, Mary Coben, representing Chemours. I would like to make some public comments.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Please go
Okay.
ahead. Your
Thank
2
you.
minutes start
Yep.
now.
All right, good morning, Mary Coben, representing Chemours. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you today about the fire code. As you may know, the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act, signed into law on December 2020, mandates that the US EPA phase down the consumption and production of hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, including refrigerants. This transition began on January 1, 2022, with a 10% reduction in GWP, with another 40% reduction coming up right now, January 1, 2024. Therefore, the industry will need to transition to lower GWP refrigerants to handle this in the HVACR industry. Typically, the lower GWP refrigerants have different flammability class. Today, I'm going to share more about the 2L class. The industry has been preparing for this transition for over 10 years. The necessary safety standards, ASHRAE 34, ASHRAE 15, UL 60332-5 2-40, and UL 60335-2-89 have all been updated and include the necessary updates to handle safety refrigerants with different flammability, particularly refrigerants with low flammability, those called the 2L refrigerants. Code proposals were made last year during Virginia's open code cycle. Unfortunately, the Virginia code process 5 code proposals, BF 202, BF 608, parts 1 and part 2, BF 911, and BF 5003 were heard but not accepted. I believe it was because they were submitted in through the fire code and not submitted in through the building code, but these are related to the fire code. Please refer to the Virginia Code Hearing Book, page 663. I've shared that book with Kyle. I believe he can share that with you folks. These codes are critically important for storage, handling, and servicing of the new lower GWP refrigerants. These codes were adopted by the ICC during the recent code cycle and update the code for requirements for 2L refrigerants. We ask that the committee review these code proposals and change them. Specifically, these will allow the storage and handling to be aligned with the ICC and also be aligned with the new flammability class GHS, the Global Harmonization Standard. Thank you.
That's 2 minutes. Thank you very much for your comments.
We have Andrew Klein. Would you like to speak to the fire code?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Sure. Thank you. Andrew Klein, representing AHRI. As Mary had mentioned, we are in the process now of switching to new refrigerants, which do have a slight flammability profile. So what this does, this allows all of the distributors and warehouses currently that have our A1 refrigerants, which do not have a flammability, to be replaced with these mildly flammables without having to be a high hazard use. So right now we only have a single classification for flammable gases. It's either flammable or it's not. This puts two categories of flammable gas in, which is consistent with the GIS classification. So A, it's about time we fully move over, but B, it's very important that we at least move over to the GIS classification for flammable gases. And this is consistent verbatim with what was put into the 2024 both fire and building codes. Since it affects the MAQ table, that's why it goes into the fire and the building code. But the fire code, at least at ICC, is who handles those particular sections. So I'll be sending in a written comment as well with the exactly asking what I'd like you to do, but we'd like you to approve those 5 code change proposals that Mary had mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And speakers.
Chair, I believe that's it. Back to.
Okay. That concludes the comments for the Virginia Statewide Fire Prevention Code. So we'll move on to the Uniform Statewide Building Code.
First, we have Mr. Glenn Besa.
Who's on deck? Anyone on deck?
Bob Shippey,
He'll be next.
Steve Shapiro.
So my name is Glenn Bessa. I'm here to talk about climate change. I need to tell you that by not bringing Virginia up to code, you may be handicapping state and local governments' ability to compete for tens of millions of dollars in grant funds under the EPA's new Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, because public efficiency is one of the most effective ways to cut climate pollution. I'd like to conclude by playing a 90-second excerpt from climate activist Greta Thunberg speaking September 2019 to the UN Climate Summit, but it's relevant to what we have here today. So I'm going to play this for you. If I can get it to play.
The systems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is the money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight. You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Bob Shippey, and then Steve Shapiro, and then Lena Lewis.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bob Shippey, I'm a Henrico citizen. That was an interesting excerpt there. I believe I'm going to talk about money. So independent analysis shows that simply we adopt the 2021 IECC standards, then occupants would save an average net average $250 a month, a year. $250 a year probably doesn't sound like a lot to some of you, but for people that are struggling with increasing costs of lots of things in daily life, it is meaningful. And that is $250 net per year after the initial incremental cost of the measures to adopt the standard. So I would just urge you to go ahead and do that small action to save folks a little bit of money on an annual basis. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Can you repeat your name again?
Bob Shippey, Shippee. Thanks.
Next speaker.
Next, we have Mr. Steve Shapiro, and then Lena Lewis.
Okay.
Good morning, I'm Steve Shapiro, representing the Apartment and Office Building Association of Metropolitan Washington and the Virginia Apartment Management Association. Together, we represent the owners and managers of roughly 172 million square feet of commercial space and 630,000 residential units throughout the Commonwealth. We applaud your action taken on December 12th and believe that those decisions struck a very fair compromise between life safety and reasonable development in the Commonwealth. We ask that you stay the course and adopt the proposed regulations relative to the 2021 Uniform Statewide Building Code, Statewide Fire Prevention Code, amusement device regulations, industrialized building safety regulations. We again request that you oppose proposal number 985, which if approved would place the entire expense of in-building emergency communication systems on the owner of the building. For example, approval of this proposal could cause an existing building owner to spend thousands of dollars to retrofit and upgrade a new system. If a new building is constructed, it now blocks the signal of the pre-existing building. We also again request the board to reject proposal 1169, which would strike the exception for the installation of fire extinguishers in groups A, B, and E equipped with quick response sprinklers and would now require the extinguishers regardless. This exact same proposal has been before the board during the last 4 cycles, and it's now back for the 5th time. Each time the board has rejected it based on a lack of data to support such a move, as well as the potential for such a change to encourage building occupants to remain in a burning building and attempt to fight a fire rather than evacuating. Lastly, there were 21 commercial energy related proposals in this cycle. 18 of these were non-consensus during the work group meetings, and our members are opposed to the changes that eliminate all previous state amendments in favor of adopting the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code, whether wholly or in part. We commend the board for striking the correct balance between sustainable development and the need to conserve energy. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today.
Thank you.
Lewis.
Good morning. My name is Lena Lewis. I'm the Energy and Climate Policy Manager for the Virginia chapter of the Nature Conservancy. We request that the board consider amendments, even if they were labeled non-consensus from the work group process, and I have a couple I'd like to highlight here today. First, we recommend that the board adopt the 2021 IECC standard for wall insulation. The standard is important because it will save residents substantial money over the lifetime of the mortgage and when compared to the cost of retrofitting. We also recommend that the board adopt the amendment for ensuring residents of multifamily housing have access to affordable electric vehicle chargers. This is EC-C 405.10-21. Building codes must keep up to support the best forward-looking practices, allowing homes to be part of an affordable transition to electric vehicles. Even if today's residents are mostly driving gas-powered cars, the next residents will likely be driving EVs. We understand that adding EV chargers to the USB-C involves a different way of thinking about buildings than has been required in the past. We ask the board to embark on this new thought process now. This transformation of the automobile is already upon us. Dominion Energy expects the number of EVs in Virginia to double by the end of next year and then double again by 2026. S&P Global Mobility forecasts 40% of passenger cars in the United States to be EVs by 2030, passenger car sales rather. So Virginia's buildings, particularly the parking lots of multifamily residential buildings, should be built with the anticipation that they will be filled with EVs that need to be charged overnight. And as with many building features, adding in EV charging capabilities is much less expensive when the building is being built and before the parking lot pavement is poured than doing so as a retrofit. An analysis of data from the electric utility PG&E shows that the cost of installing EV chargers in a multifamily building is 4 to 12 times more expensive as a retrofit than when the building was built. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I believe that's it for in person for the building code.
Okay. First online.
We have Judy Geyer, followed by John Ward, followed by Ross Shearer.
Okay. Judy Geyer, your 2 minutes begins now.
Sorry. I'd like to discuss the pros and cons of adopting the current version of the IECC with none of the weakening amendments included in the board's final rule. There are several pros. First, as reported by the U.S. Department of Energy, full compliance with the IECC would benefit building occupants. Research demonstrates that buildings constructed to high efficiency standards save more money for occupants over time than they add to the upfront cost. Second, as reported by DOE as well, requiring full compliance with the IECC would provide health, safety, air quality, and climate benefits for all Virginians over the 70-year course that new buildings are generally in use. Third, adopting the full IECC wouldn't prevent builders from continuing to make excellent profits. Builders already have to meet IECC requirements when they work across the river in Maryland, and if they didn't make enough profit, they wouldn't continue to build there. It's also not an affordability issue for buyers or occupants because homes built in Maryland sell in the same price range as in Virginia, even though they meet IECC standards. Fourth, the board is required by Virginia law to adopt energy efficiencies at least as stringent as the latest IECC, unless it can show that the incremental construction costs would exceed the value of energy savings and other benefits over time. If the board wants to avoid conforming to the full IECC, it must demonstrate that, in fact, the value of energy savings and benefits are less than the added marginal cost. I don't believe the board could possibly do that. However, to my knowledge, the board hasn't even tried to do that, and that is a violation of law. So on the pro side of adopting the full IECC, we have greater affordability for building occupants, better health, reduced emissions, reduced contributions to climate change, and legal compliance. On the con side, we have builders who object to paying more upfront in construction costs, even though they have to incur those same expenses when they build across the river, and even though the additional investment would be more than paid back in public benefit. Buildings represent an enormous portion of all energy use and are a major contributor to climate change. Requiring builders to build homes that are energy efficient is a key part of any plan to address the climate crisis, and we should do that. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have John Ward, followed by Ross Shearer and Rose Hendricks.
Okay, John Ward, you go ahead.
Morning, thank you. I'm presenting on behalf of the Falls Church Climate Action Network. We strongly recommend that the board adopt the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code for residential construction without weakening amendments. We believe the IECC has already undergone stakeholder scrutiny at the national level to ensure that its energy efficiency measures will pay for themselves in a reasonably short period. The U.S. Department of Energy has already determined that adopting the 2021 code would save about 9% of energy costs and usage compared to the 2018 code. Over the 3 years during which this latest code will be in effect, Virginians will likely add 40,000 to 80,000 new single-family homes. If this board dilutes the 2021 code down to Virginia's 2018 levels, these 40 to 80,000 homes will be saddled with at least an extra 10% in energy bills for decades. That amounts to wasting the energy needed to fully heat and cool 4,000 to 8,000 homes for the next 60 years that they will be standing. Sticking with the 2018 level code means burning more natural gas, virtually all of which is imported into Virginia, purchasing more electricity from out-of-state coal-fired power plants, covering more land with solar panels, and, if needed, expanding transmission capacity. This unnecessary extra demand will raise energy prices, and those extra capital and capacity costs get passed on to all residential utility ratepayers. The extra greenhouse gas emissions will worsen climate change, affecting all Virginians, especially those exposed to flooding, extreme rainfall, and sea level rise. If instead you update the code to match the 2021 IECC, the industry will use local, skilled labor to build tighter buildings with less air leakage and to build and install better insulated windows, doors, and walls. Better insulated homes are also more resilient to the hotter days brought on by climate change. In conclusion, Virginia municipalities like Falls Church are powerless to set efficiency standards for the buildings within our borders. We urge the board to help us reduce the cost of living and the impacts of climate change for all Virginians. The Falls Church Climate Action Network is asking the board to adopt the full residential provisions of the 2021 IECC. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Chair, next we have Ross Shearer, Rose Hendricks, and Ivy May.
Okay, Ross Shearer, you may go ahead, 2 minutes.
Good morning. I am Ross Shearer in Vienna, where I've lived for 40 years. The legal authority of this board is constituted as a public service. A vocal minority of you understand this implicitly, having left an enduring record of virtuous advocacy for the public's best interests. Thank you for your participation. The decisions permitted to take place this cycle resemble an electrical short circuit. To date, the board has chosen to disapprove non-consensus proposals valuable to the public but opposed by some stakeholders from the regulated construction industry, while approving the non-consensus proposals harmful to the public that some from the regulated warehousing industry seek. The principle of checks and balances is a thematic component of our democracy. So in Virginia, when the consensus process allows use of conflicting methods to favor the regulated, an alarm should have triggered to alert all involved of the occurrence of an internal inconsistency. But there was no alarm or concern, quite the contrary. In his January 11 memorandum, Justin Bell assured the department that it may make this regulatory action. Thus, having been so absolved, no one is on the hook for the offense of weakening the formally adopted energy conserving provisions for warehouses or for rejecting life-saving residential sprinklers and model energy conserving proposals. Departmental staff frequently mention that Virginia's code development process is recognized nationally for its excellence. This cycle's results lay bare the inherent weakness of the stakeholders' consensus approach, thus jeopardizing that reputation and the Commonwealth. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Here next we have Rose Hendricks, Ivy Main, and Natalie Pien.
Rose Hendricks, 2 minutes starting now.
Thank you. My name is Rose Hendricks. I'm a resident of Falls Church and a volunteer climate activist with Citizens Climate Lobby. I've spent the past 2 years working to reduce the carbon emissions and improve the efficiency of my own home, including installing solar panels, an electric vehicle charger, and replacing my gas stove with an induction cooktop. And although this is what the present and the future demands of us, each of these has been significantly more complicated and expensive than needed because the home's electric readiness was not considered when it was constructed in 2012. I strongly urge you to adopt the 2021 IECC building standards for Virginia. As you know, HB 2227 mandates that the board make the building code consistent with, or at least as stringent as, the IECC standards. Adopting these standards will not only help Virginia reduce its carbon footprint and lower energy costs for homeowners and businesses, but it will also improve the comfort, health, and safety of residents. By adopting the 2021 IECC standards, Virginia can join a growing number of states and municipalities across the country that have recognized the importance of energy efficiency in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and mitigating the impacts of climate change. So I urge you to adopt the 2021 IECC standards to build a more sustainable and resilient future for Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, we have Ivy Main, followed by Natalie Pien, and then Frederick Krimgold.
Okay. Ivy Main, your 2 minutes begins now.
Thank you. My name is Ivy Main. I live in McLean, Virginia, and I support adoption of the full 2021 IECC. After my husband and I moved into our house, we had a home energy audit done, which found significant air leakage and other weatherization failures. We spent thousands of dollars on retrofits, but the house is still leaky because it wasn't tightly built in the first place. These failures have cost us thousands of dollars more over the years we've lived here in higher energy bills. The house still feels drafty, and air quality has suffered because the gas furnace ran more often. So I was pleased that the General Assembly passed a law in 2021 requiring the board to assess the public health, safety, and welfare benefits of adopting standards that are at least as stringent as those contained in the IECC, including potential energy savings and air quality benefits over time compared to the cost of initial construction. Adopting the full IECC will prevent others from going through what I did and save homeowners far more money over time than the incremental cost of building to a higher standard. Given these savings and air quality benefits, the DHCD does not have the option to disregard the IECC. It's clear from the law that the board must adopt the efficiency measures of the full IECC. Because the savings over time from adopting the full model code exceed the marginal cost of meeting the higher standards, the board cannot legally adopt a lesser standard. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have Natalie Pien, Frederick Krimgold, and then Susan Stone.
Pien. Okay. Natalie Pien, your 2 minutes begins now. I believe you're on mute.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Natalie Pian, and I'm a member of the Sierra Club Great Falls Group. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts to adopt all the updated IECC recommendations. I'm concerned that the requirements of HB 2227 approved on March 30th, 2021 have not been met. The law states that upon each publication by the International Code of New Version of the International Energy Conservation Code, IECC, the Board of Housing and Community Development shall consider adopting amendments to the Uniform State Building Code to address changes in the IECC relating to energy conservation. Virginians deserve all the energy efficiency benefits as documented in the US DOE report, Cost Effectiveness of the 2021 IECC for Residential Buildings in Virginia. In particular, the economic benefits will address the energy burden experienced by Virginia's low-income households, rural households, and people of color. Today, neither the government programs nor the investor-owned utility programs are sufficient to alleviate this burden. Virginia's building code must be improved to solve this equity problem. Because my husband and I have electrified our home, we enjoy better health by breathing cleaner air free from gas leaks and pollution from gas stoves. We have a cleaner conscience too, knowing that our home is no longer powered by fossil gas. Our home does not create the demand for fossil fuels it did once. The building code must be updated to reduce the fossil fuel demand from all homes and to create healthier homes and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Today, I urge the board to fulfill its HB 2227 legal requirements to, quote, assess the public health, safety, and welfare benefits, adopting standards that are at least as stringent as those contained in the IECC, including potential energy savings and air quality benefits over time compared to the initial cost. These benefits have been well documented by the US DOE study. It's way past time for Virginia to update its energy efficiency code. Thank you for your serious consideration.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Chair, we have Frederick Primgold, followed by Susan Stillman, and then Bill Penniman.
Okay, Frederick, Pringle, go ahead. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Yeah, I'm Fred Pringold, and I'm the former Associate Dean for Research at the College of Architecture and Urban Studies at Virginia Tech, and a former consultant to the World Bank on disaster risk reduction and building regulation for resilience. I would like to address specifically the provisions related to insulation, wall and ceiling insulation, and air infiltration. I believe that in both cases, we need to at least meet the standard of the 2021 IECC. And in fact, we should accept the IECC without exceptions. Beyond that, I think that it's important that the air infiltration issue relates not only to comfort, but also to health and to resistance to the impacts of expected future climate change. And the insulation issues also relate to occupant health and comfort. I think it's extremely important that we recognize that failure to take into account these measures in new construction will definitely cost homeowners and the Commonwealth a growing amount of money related to expected damage, that is related to damages anticipated by responsible scientific opinion and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Lastly, I would suggest that approval of these measures will aid the building industry and the home builders by allowing them to market improved economy, health, and safety to future homeowners in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Here next we have Susan Stillman, Bill Penniman, and Monique Candace.
Susan Stillman, 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. So my name is Susan Stillman. I live in Vienna, Virginia. Virginia's building code is woefully behind the current IECC set in 2021. Our neighboring state in Maryland adopts the IECC a year after it's released. Homes built to code in Virginia are less expensive to operate over the life of the home because they're better insulated and have less air leakage. Virginians pay a heavy price in utility costs because our code is not up to the most recent standards. The price of electricity goes up year over year. And my last gas bill, there was a note from the fossil gas company that in addition to the volatility of the price of fossil gas that we've seen over the last few years, the price of fossil gas is predicted to increase. While having a mortgage one can afford is important, having predictable operating costs to heat, cool, and cook are important too. Many Virginians are installing solar so they can reduce the risk of increases in the price of electricity. New homes should have the conduit in place and the appropriate circuit box so that installing solar is easy and inexpensive to do. This should happen at the time of construction. We're talking about conduit, not a huge expense to the builder. By the same token, conduit infrastructure and circuit box infrastructure should be EV charging and induction cooktop ready. I spent a lot of money getting the wiring run for my induction cooktop. This should not be the case in homes being built going forward. Putting the infrastructure to future-proof homes during construction is the right time to do it. Well-insulated residents are more comfortable to live in and less expensive to operate over the life of the home. Virginia's building code needs to meet the current IECC. Our citizens deserve nothing less.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, we have Bill Penniman, Monique Hannis, Jeff May.
Bill Penniman, you may go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you. As you know, I have actively participated in the work group and rulemaking processes throughout the 2021 cycle. Tomorrow, I will submit written comments on behalf of 5 organizations whose members include over 30,000 residents of Virginia. A few of the basic messages in those comments. 1, to comply with Virginia law, the proposed final rule must be revised to adopt the full IECC and to adopt several additional proposals that we've submitted that will save energy and benefit residents for decades. As other speakers have noted, current Virginia law requires that standards be at least as stringent as the full IECC whenever this energy savings, air quality, and other benefits exceed over time the incremental cost of construction. Minimizing costs of construction is relevant only if it's consistent with the national codes. Full compliance with each update to the IEC since 2006, both for residential and commercial codes, has consistently been shown by the Department of Energy and a national laboratory to save energy and money for occupants year after year compared to the prior IECC. The 2021 IECC would produce energy savings of 17.9% across all climate zones. In Virginia, it would save the statewide residents would save $7.2 million in the first year, and over time, they would save over $8,300 each. Initial costs are taken into account. Full IECC compliance will enhance housing affordability. Under Virginia law and many others and federal policies, affordability is measured by total housing costs, including utilities, as well as mortgages and rents. That's exactly what DOE and the Pacific National Laboratory examine when they find that the IECC will reduce residents' costs for decades.
That's 2 minutes, sir. Please, you may conclude, but that's been over 2 minutes.
Okay. So the other thing I would say is that it's critical that you remove the proposed rollback of commercial categories F, S, and U, which are totally unsupported by evidence and totally contrary to law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Monique Hannis, Jeff May, and Gina Weber.
Monique Hannis, your 2 minutes begin now.
Thank you and good morning. I'm Monique Hannes, and I'm speaking from the perspective of a 32-year resident of Arlington, Virginia, that has renovated and improved energy efficiency on 2 homes over the years. I also represent the Climate and Clean Energy Working Group that is part of the Virginia Grassroots Coalition. This is an umbrella group of 50 organizations and 15,000 engaged advocates across the Commonwealth. I urge the board to strengthen building codes to make Virginia a leader, particularly in energy efficiency. I think there are 3 good reasons for setting stronger across the board building codes and energy efficiency standards for all buildings, homes, commercial properties, schools, and other public buildings. First, we derive the greatest long-term energy savings impact for all Virginians, whether we're renters, homeowners, customers of Virginia-based businesses, and all of us who pay taxes to maintain our public buildings. Second, by creating a level playing field for builders and contractors, we can improve our buildings of all types when they're being built or renovated, rather than making thicker insulation, energy efficient systems, lighting systems, and better heating and cooling systems an optional afterthought. This is something I've learned firsthand is usually much more expensive to improve later. Third, I believe this will make Virginia a more competitive building market leader, support our economy and the building industry. Bottom line, I feel that this is the right action to take now that will pay back for decades to come. Thank you for your consideration and for hearing me out.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Chair, we have Jeff Mang, followed by Gina Weatherup, and Ben Ray.
Okay. Jeff Mang, your 2 minutes begins now.
Okay, thank you. Jeff Mang, representing the Polyiso-Cyanurate Insulation Manufacturers Association, PIMA. So first of all, thank you for this opportunity to comment and for the remote option. In general, PIMA would urge the adoption of the IECC, the unamended IECC, but I'd like to focus some comments specifically on the Appendix CD that was adopted. PIMA urges the board to delete the weakening envelope provisions proposed for Group F, S, and U buildings under that appendix. I'm not as familiar with Groups F and U, but applying these weaker envelope requirements to the storage or warehouse category would have a very large negative impact. Warehouses represent about 25% of new construction, and 75% of those buildings are both heated and cooled. Nationally, almost $12 billion is spent each year on the energy used in warehouses. And under this amendment, those costs would go up for Virginia. The Appendix CD is an option it's not needed. Under the current IECC, buildings without conditioned spaces and low energy buildings already are exempted from the envelope requirements. And under the ASHRAE 90.1 standard, which is an alternative compliance path under the IECC, the envelope insulation requirements for semi-heated spaces are already much less stringent than they are under the base code requirements. In addition, the proponent's reason statement for this amendment addressed only the upfront cost savings and provided no information about the impact on full building life cycle costs. The requirements for these building categories have been in place under the Model Energy Code for quite some time now. So I think this rollback, which diverges significantly from the National Model Code, should be supported by a more complete life cycle cost analysis.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, we have Gina Weatherup, Ben Rabe, Eric Lacy.
Okay, Gina Weatherup, you may go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Gina DeAndrea Weatherup. I'm a small business owner, a parent, a homeowner in Fairfax County, and I recently started volunteering with the Citizens Climate Lobby. I'm here to give you a very brief personal story. You see, I just purchased my first all-electric vehicle, or EV, and it's been really exciting to drive it around and show off my new car. And before I purchased it, I'd read about EVs and I talked with EV owners for more than a year. And we ultimately made the decision to buy based on the availability of my chosen vehicle. As a result, we wound up making the purchase before actually adding the charging capabilities to our home. Well, 3 weeks after purchasing my EV, after multiple times driving the 1 mile to plug my car in and finding all the chargers taken, I realized the enormous inconvenience it is to have to add one more errand, which requires advanced planning and has no guarantee of success. As I said, I run a business, I own a home, I parent, I volunteer. I have a lot to do. I should have a plug in my home. Now I know, separate from even purchasing the actual charger, it's going to cost me $1,500 just to run the extra wiring. And I'm lucky enough to be in a home whose electric panel doesn't need to be expanded or upgraded in any way. I look around me and see new homes being built all the time. It's 2023. The new homes being built should have the capability of at-home charging stations built in. As you've already heard from others, it is far cheaper and I imagine far quicker to install the required wiring or a conduit and space on the circuit box that supports EV charging during construction than it is to retrofit, as so many of us are already choosing to do. We invest that money and those resources because we can, but not everyone can. Electric vehicles are not going away. And the cheapest way to ensure that people can easily charge the transportation is to build buildings that are pre-wired for charging stations, both homes and businesses. Please require new residences to be built to make EV charging a normal part of our lives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Here we have Ben Rabe, followed by Eric Lacy, followed by Glenn Dean.
Ben Rabe, your 2 minutes begins now.
Thank you. This is Ben Rabe from New Buildings Institute. We help jurisdictions around the country adopt the building code as a tool to meet their climate goals. As many of you know, we introduced a slew of proposals in order to improve Virginia's building code. Given that we are at a late state in this process, I'd like to focus on primarily 3 recommendations at this point. We recommend starting with an unamended version of the 2021, which prioritizes removing the weakening weatherization and envelope requirements that many other folks have mentioned, and consider strengthening amendments to meet the state's climate goals, including electric-ready amendments and EV charging. As I said, we introduced a number of other proposals that we think are all very strong, but these I think will get the most benefits to Virginia residents at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Eric.
Mr. Chair, we have Eric Lacy, followed by Glenn Dean, followed by Mary Coban, speaking to the state of my building codes.
Okay, Eric Lacy, your 2 minutes begins now.
Thank you, members of the board and Mr. Chair, for taking the time to listen to our public comments. And again, thank you for the remote option. I'm Eric Lacy, the chair of the Responsible Energy Codes Alliance. We're a coalition of building product and equipment manufacturers, trade associations, and efficiency and environmental advocates. And we've been involved in this process for many years. We do appreciate the hard work of the board and all the work groups and the progress that we're making towards full adoption of the IECC. I appreciate that stakeholders are willing to get together to find reasonable compromises. Now, while I think we've made really good progress this cycle, there's still a few really important amendments that need to be made here in order to get the full benefits of the 2021 IECC, but also to help facilitate tax credits for homeowners and builders, and to make sure that federal grants are directed towards the Commonwealth. And I just want to make a quick note about these federal dollars. They were raised earlier, but I think this is an important point. $1.25 billion tax dollars are being allocated to code adoption and implementation over the next decade or so. And this is through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. As a taxpayer in Oakton, Virginia, I'm urging the board to make the necessary adjustments to the USBC to make sure that those federal dollars are directed towards our own Commonwealth, rather than just forfeiting our tax dollars to other states that are already on track for adoption of the 2021 IECC. I do think it's worth a second and third look at the codes to make sure that we are as compliant as we can be to help ensure that those dollars are landing here in the Commonwealth rather than going somewhere else. Now, we've submitted more extensive written comments to the board on Friday, and we detailed 3 weakening amendments that we think need to be fixed before the rule is finalized. The first one is a new Appendix CD, which Jeff Meng spoke about. This needs to be deleted or fixed. It applies the 2006 IECC requirements to some building types. This is going to create some conflicts. Whatever you think about the energy savings, it's a mismatch. But we do think that the energy savings differences are huge, and we're going to lose a lot of energy as a result of these amendments. The other 2 amendments, the wall insulation requirements are 2 code cycles behind now, and we think the envelope air leakage requirements can be tightened up a little bit more. We've made good progress on this, and we appreciate the homebuilders working with us on this, but we think we can go that next step and come up to full code compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, we have Glenn Dean, followed by Mary Coben, followed by Robert Glass.
Okay, Glenn Dean, go ahead.
Good morning. Glenn Deans representing myself. I'm speaking on the subject of residential sprinkler systems, in particular for single-family homes. Given all the true and blatantly false rhetoric over the past cycles, I suggest the entirety of the board direct and set up through its Codes and Standards Committee the establishment of a balanced subcommittee for this upcoming code cycle specific to residential sprinkler systems. By balanced, I mean that it's be comprised of members of the board who are opposed to such systems, an equal number of board members in support, and an equal number of board members who know nothing about these systems beyond the concept. These members should actively participate in all the properly advertised meetings, but not to the exclusion of other board members who want to witness the debates firsthand. And it's for the purpose of rooting out what is false and what is true about residential fire sprinkler systems. Based on the statutory language of 3699 of the Code of Virginia, stating in part, quote, the provisions of the building code and modifications thereof shall be such as to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the Commonwealth, provided that the buildings and structures should be permitted to be constructed, rehabbed, and maintained at the least possible cost consistent with recognized standards for health, safety, energy conservation, water conservation, end quote. I emphasize the legislative hierarchy of shall versus should in that quote. It is compulsory of the board as a whole to give serious and unbiased consideration of this important and serious provision within the model code. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Here next we have Mary Coben speaking to the USBC, Robert Glass, Dan Rowan.
Mary Coben,
Yep.
go ahead.
Thank you very much. Again, Mary Coben representing Chemours. I'm just going to touch on this just to make sure that we're clear. During the Virginia Code proposal, process 5 codes proposals, BF 202, BF 608 parts 1 and part 2, and BF 911 and BF 5003 were heard. They were heard but not accepted because they were submitted into the fire code and should have been submitted into the building code. So we apologize for that. That error in omission there, supporting that. So please refer to the Virginia Code Hearing Book, page 663. We noted before that these codes are critically important for air conditioning, heating, ventilation, and refrigeration industry to meet the AIM Act. And we note that these are also for commercial and residential applications. Without these codes being approved, folks who are out there handling, servicing, and storing refrigerants will have a very difficult time moving forward with low GWP refrigerants for servicing these applications due to the upcoming AIM Act. Again, next phase down. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Here we have Robert Glass, followed by Dan Rowan.
Robert Glass, 2 minutes now.
Yes. Yes, good morning. My name is Robert Glass with Daikin Comfort Technologies. I'd like to first start by saying ditto for Mary Coben and the information that she noted. The second thing I want to go ahead and address is the need to update some of the standards that are noted in the reference sections of the building code, particularly the ULCSA 60335-2-40. In the updates here, it notes the 2019 edition, which was the latest edition at the time proposals were originally submitted to the board. But subsequent to that, the standard has been updated to the 2022 edition, and the 2024 IMC and IRC through the Group B code cycle has updated and adopted the 2022 edition of the safety standard. It's critical that that be updated because computer room air conditioners that use A2L refrigerants are not addressed in any other standard, only the 2022 edition. In addition, there are additional updates to all equipment using A2L refrigerants. Also, the note for ASHRAE 34 and ASHRAE 15, they are both noted as the 2019 editions. Those also need to be updated to the 2022 editions because new A2L refrigerants are addressed in the ASHRAE 34 2022. And the ASHRAE 15 2022 addresses updated requirements for all equipment that are using A2L refrigerants. Again, those have been approved and adopted by ICC for the 2024 IMC and the ASHRAE 15 2022 for the IRC. So I'd like the board to go ahead and consider, and we will go. I will go ahead and submit comments to provide the chapter and verse on where these updates are needed. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Here we have Dan Will.
Dan Willem, 2 minutes begins now.
Good morning. My name is Dan Wilhelm, Fairfax County Deputy Building Official, and I would like to speak in support of the non-consensus changes that eliminate weakening of the Virginia Energy Code amendments, especially those that allow reduced wall insulation and higher infiltration for blower door tests. The Fairfax County Board of Supervisors supports actions that would require increased energy efficient construction. Approximately 14% of Virginia residents reside in Fairfax County, and this would support our community-wide Energy and Climate Action Plan, or CCAP, which is unique in that it was developed by the community for the community with input from dozens of organizational, business, and civic leaders, as well as individual residents. And we would like to support all the previous comments that support to this, and also note that there is more to affordability than first cost. More importance should be placed on the affordability of owning a home or a building after the purchase. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair, that's the last speaker we have registered for the building code this time.
Okay. Then that concludes the public comments for the Uniform Statewide Building Code, and we'll move on to the Virginia Amusement Device Regulation.
Chair, we don't have anyone that I'm aware of who's registered, either online or in person.
Okay. In that case, we'll move on to the Virginia Industrialized Building Safety Regulations.
We have one speaker registered in person, Randy Grumbein.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, good morning. Randy Grumbein, representing the Virginia Manufacturing Modular Building Association. Just a couple of comments. We do not have objections to the proposed amendments to the IBC section. We do have some builders, however, are concerned with adoption of the 2021 IECC, not being able to yet find a way to comply with building some models, especially in the more climate restricted regions such as Bath and Highland counties. So we do have a concern about those proposals of the 2021 adoption of the IECC. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I don't believe we have anyone else registered to speak.
Okay. And that concludes the public comment. And I'll close the public hearing. Are there any other persons wishing to speak regarding the issues for which this public hearing was convened? Okay, not hearing anyone, then the hearing is now concluded. All comments will be taken under advisement by the board. I would like to re-emphasize that any written statements received will be considered by the board. Thank you very much. That concludes the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I put the link for the public comment email in the chat online, and public comments can be submitted through tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, written comments can be submitted through tomorrow. Thank you very much, Kyle. That concludes the public hearing. We'll take a 5-minute break and we'll begin the Board of Housing and Community Development Committee meeting. Thank you.